YouTube. What's good? YouTube. What's good? Today we have the Toy Box Killer, the shocking story of David Parker Ray. Real story, true crime. I just seen this pop up. 44 minutes long. You got some snacks? Bro, why do I look like this? It's just background. It's gonna change. Got me some food, a little sweet and spicy sauce. Let's get into it, boys. 44 minutes.
On the 22nd of
Somebody
March
send me this. Keep sending me stuff.
1999, a terrified woman ran through the streets of New Mexico, naked.
911.
She'd escaped after being held captive by sadistic sexual torturer David Parker Ray.
The fuck is that?
She wasn't his only victim.
I was scared. I didn't know if he was going to kill me or not.
He could get a woman in virtually any position. She was his sex slave.
More than 30 women had passed through Parker Ray's torture chamber. The police suspected that many of them had been murdered.
I've never had any question that David Parker Ray is a serial killer.
The police launched a vast search for bodies, but Parker Ray was always one step ahead.
David was a very intelligent individual and took great lengths to make sure that he was not discovered.
Could one of America's most prolific serial killers get away with murder? New Mexico,
It looks like the
a
bitch.
barren land with the second highest murder rate in America. Cut off from the world by 40,000 square miles of desert, Truth or Consequences is a town where people go about their business and few questions are asked. Population 6,000 and falling.
Truth or Consequences has kind of an undercurrent of criminal activity. We investigated a murder where a guy was stabbed 43 times.
Damn.
We had another murder where a guy beat his wife and put her in the trunk of the car and burned her in the car. Then there was a man found dead in his apartment. He had blue panties on and no other clothes. He had a doorknob inserted in his rectum. This is just a community
Doorknob?
where strange and bizarre crimes occur.
On the 22nd of March 1999, the police received a call that would open a case far more shocking than anything they'd seen before. The call came from a panicked local after 21-year-old Cynthia Verheul burst into her house. She was naked, except for a
Burst
metal
into the
dog
house?
collar
No way.
attached to a 6-foot chain.
Yes, I'm calling for a young lady that ran into the house and says she's just been raped. She's got a chain on her and everything. Send someone right away. This lady's naked and everything else. She said they've been holding her for 3 days.
So the officers arrive on the scene. Cynthia Verheul's telling them, "Don't let them get me. They kidnapped me. They tied me up. They raped me." The officers, of course, who and where, and all these questions are come up in their minds. And sometimes it's really difficult to get answers from a frantic person.
Cynthia Verheul was a
Better lock
prostitute
in.
with a heroin addiction. She said she was abducted by a client and driven to a house on the outskirts of Truth or Consequences.
As far as when a police officer is called to an incident involving a prostitute, that's always in the officer's mind is what degree of credibility do I give this lady? Especially if it's a real bizarre story.
The house belonged to David Parker Ray, a 59-year-old mechanic.
Cynthia said that she was on a bed in a kind of an expanded trailer house. She was naked, she was handcuffed, and she had a collar around her neck which was attached to a pole. She was given a bucket for a toilet. She was sexually assaulted. She was repeatedly sexually assaulted.
That's crazy.
She was under the impression she was going to be killed, so she was desperate to get out.
Cynthia Verheul said that she was held in this house for 3 days.
I should get out.
On the third day, Cynthia Verheul said that a fight ensued. A lamp was broken. Cynthia Vigil then was able to escape out the back door of this residence.
How?
Parker Ray was arrested. The police obtained a search warrant for his house to investigate the prostitute's allegations.
He was still at the house when she escaped?
Once they go inside the house, they find where Cynthia had been held in the sunken living room area. They see the bed, they see the pole, there's some chains and manacles there. There's a bucket with her waist on the floor.
Bro, get that off the camera. I'm eating.
There was obvious signs of a struggle and disarray in the room. Obviously, what they saw did not look like the area of somebody who had been kept there voluntarily.
The search team also found a collection of sinister sexual devices.
Everything that they were seeing did nothing for them except to add evidence and corroboration to what Cynthia, their victim, was telling them.
But
You might get
nothing
the
could
chair.
prepare them for what they would find inside a simple white trailer at the side of Parker Ray's house.
It wasn't really until the utility trailer was opened that we really began to get a good understanding of what we were potentially dealing with. Then Pandora's box was opened.
In the desert town of Truth or Consequences, prostitute Cynthia Vigil was recovering in hospital. She had escaped from 3 days of sexual torture at the hands of David Parker Ray. Parker Ray had been arrested. He was a 59-year-old mechanic and a father of 2.
Go and state your name for the record. David.
Father of 2?
He claimed that the prostitute had agreed to a session of rough bondage.
Was she a willing participant, or did she not want to do it?
At Parker Ray's house, the police were discovering the horrifying truth. The search team had arrived at a seemingly innocuous white trailer.
The fuck?
It was pretty amazing. It was
They
remarkable.
showed
I've
that?
never seen anything like it in my life. First thing my eyes focused on was this black chair, which turned out to be a gynecology chair, just
A
sitting
what?
there empty.
There was medical equipment and everywhere. Drills, modified drills with sexual devices on them and cages. I mean, it was just this unbelievable looking den.
What the?
This was a torture chamber.
What are they showing me?
David Parker Ray called the trailer his toy box, or Satan's den.
To see it the first time just kind of gave you a feeling of sickness, and it was just remarkable how everything was set up. Everything in here denoted pain. Everything in here denoted destruction.
There were several items in there that were obviously meticulously crafted by hand and were very, very sinister. David was known as very adept with his hands, as an excellent mechanic.
By day, Parker Ray worked for the local state park.
And this is David's truck right here, his original truck.
But we do not
He
care.
was
Why
well
are you
respected
smiling
for
like
his
we don't
technical
care?
ability. To those who knew him, he was not the kind of man who tortured women in his spare time.
He was just a real nice guy. He just, real nice, real smart. He was always eager to help these other guys do things, around
Could
here.
be anybody. That's crazy.
And these are some things that he made. He named them dink catchers. A rope to a piece of pipe. making him pretty creative piece of work he did there.
Okay, cool. He got a snake catcher.
And he had the ankle spreader. This looks like something that he would have made. And he has it labeled ankle spreader.
Wow. Dude, what? He spent bread on this, like.
He could get a woman in virtually any position that he wanted her in. She was his sex slave when they entered this trailer.
1000%.
And then he had the dildo fashioned out of, it's like a plastic pipe, actually. These are nails that have been melted into this plastic collar, and this would be inserted in her vagina or anal canal. And he would work it until he could get it all the way in, and then they would have these spikes here. They're going to go in, you're going to get poked, it's going to be very painful, and rip their inner thighs out. I have to wonder how many people came in contact with all this stuff.
Parker Ray's terrifying den was evidence of a long campaign of sexual torture.
The consensus was pretty clear that there were going to be additional victims here. For example, the utility trailer was taken apart virtually, and we collected trinkets, rings, necklaces, jewelry. They came from somebody.
Despite police appeals for more women to come forward, Cynthia was still the only known victim. But as a prostitute and drug addict, she might not be believed in court. The police needed more credible witnesses. Inside the toy box, Parker Ray had set up 2 video cameras. The suspicion was that he had recorded the suffering of his captives.
What?
It made sense to believe and was logical to deduce that there were videotapes somewhere. And many, many were found. There were probably 100, at least 100.
Of what?
Most of the tapes contained nothing of relevance, but one would prove explosive. It showed Parker Ray testing his equipment.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I don't know how that's going to work.
Then it cut,
This might turn it off.
and when it came back to life, Parker Ray was with a captive.
Was it the same girl?
It's what you see here is the inside of the toy box. So you see a youngish, blonde-haired woman with David, strapped down naked. He's standing over top of her or kneeling next to her at all times. He's constantly touching her, and it's obvious that he's trying to get some kind of sexual gratification out of this. She appeared to be unconscious, or at least unresponsive to anything he was doing to her. This doesn't have any of the earmarks of a consensual encounter between 2 people who just enjoy this kind of behavior.
It's insane, bro. This
The
nigga is sick.
videotape was crucial evidence of another victim, but who she was a mystery.
We're
Somebody
looking
else?
at this videotape, and we need to know who this person is. He moves her leg at one point, and what's exposed on her right calf, on the outside of her right calf, is a tattoo. And you can see it in the video, but it's not clear, and it looks like a pretty, it looked like a pretty big tattoo. So we took this tape to the FBI to have it enhanced. Once the image was enhanced, we provided that to the media. Very shortly afterwards, a woman came forward and said, "That's my tattoo. That's me."
That tattoo I have is unique. Nobody else has it.
Kelly Van Cleve was a 25-year-old childminder. She was a friend of Parker Ray's daughter, but had no recollection of ever going to his house. and no idea why the FBI had a picture of her tattoo.
What?
They told me that it came off of a video they found in David's house. Toy box.
What? So
as
you
they
wouldn't
called
even
it.
know if it was you?
It was weird. And I was scared.
Initially, it was clear that she was having difficulty remembering everything that had happened to her in the utility trailer and in her experience with David.
Before the FBI contacted me, I used to have nightmares of being tied to a table, or handcuffs, or duct tape scared me. But I could never put any of it together. And then when the FBI called, then I knew they weren't just dreams, nightmares. They were real.
Kelly was struggling to remember the details of what Parker Ray had done to her, but the police had made a chilling discovery in Parker Ray's house which would explain everything. A tape recording, in his own voice, that he played to initiate his victims.
Hello there, bitch. I'm going to tell you in detail why you have been kidnapped, what's going to happen to you.
This was sinister stuff.
Now, you are obviously here against your will. You're going to be kept chained in a variety of different positions, usually with your legs or knees forced wide apart. You'll be raped thoroughly and repeatedly in every hole you've got.
Midway through, the tape revealed that Kelly's memory loss may have been no accident.
You're going to be drugged up real heavy with a combination of sodium pentothal and phenobarbital. You're not going to remember a fucking thing about this little adventure or what has happened to you.
Sodium pentothal and phenobarbital numb pain and induce amnesia. It seemed Parker Ray was using drugs to control his victims and ensure they would not remember his crimes.
Maybe it explains some of the things that were done to me. Being tied down and how uncomfortable you're
That
gonna
is
feel
crazy.
and being used as a sex
How-
slave.
Like, how the fuck does he know that does that? Like, what the fuck? I don't even know what that is.
Parker Ray released Kelly 3 days after taking her captive, confident that she would never remember her ordeal. But as the police questioned her, memories started to surface. Over time, she was able to piece together elements of her captivity in the toy box.
I didn't know how long I had been there. I could see under the duct tape once in a while. Had all kinds of sex devices and whips and chains and stuff. I remember him coming and going several times, but I don't know how many times. When he was in there for a long time. I was scared. I remember telling him that I wanted to go home.
No
I
shit.
didn't know if he was going to kill me or not. I don't ever remember drinking or eating anything. He let me up to use a porta pot once, but I was shackled to do that. I remember him using different kinds of toys on me. And they hurt. That's about all I remember.
I'm confused. I'm not really confused, but like when she got back, she just spawned home or something, like in the middle of the street or some shit. I don't know.
The police now had a credible witness, but not necessarily one who could get Parker Ray behind bars.
Potential weakness that she had, she didn't remember certain things. She didn't have a clear recollection of others. And that weakens the case and the overall picture that the jury is going to be given of exactly what David was up to.
The prosecution needed more, and by Parker Ray's own admission, there were many more victims to find.
In his tape recordings, he indicated that he had been involved in sexual assault since he was 15. David was
Wow.
arrested when he was 59. So he has approximately 44 years of practice.
As of the time this tape was made, I've taken 37 women for these purposes. So more than
37?
With so many victims unaccounted for, there was a fear that Parker Ray was more than a sadistic torturer. He could be a prolific serial killer.
37 is crazy.
You are expendable. It may sound harsh and cold, but I won't have any qualms at all about slicing your throat.
If you believe what David says on the tape is true, that he rapes and tortures women, there's no reason not to believe the other parts about killing women and disposing of their bodies is also true.
Death
Wow.
was a constantly resurfacing idea from David, not from us, but from David in his writings and his drawings and his tapes.
The
Everything
fuck?
revolved around death. I've never had any question that David Parker Ray is a serial killer. There's never been a doubt in my mind about it.
Whether the case was going to be a murder trial would depend on whether we could link David to the actual killing of victims.
If Parker Ray was a serial killer, he lived in the perfect place to hide the bodies. His house was on the shores of Elephant Butte Lake,
What is that? Can you go on the lake?
43 miles long and 200 feet deep. It's the largest body of water in New Mexico.
200 feet deep.
There was a map that we recovered in David Parker Ray's house that was just a map of the lake with X's on it. David had a sailboat, a large skiff sailing boat with depth-finding equipment, and he knew that lake very, very well, and he knew where the deepest places in that lake were.
I was hoping that we were going to have a body. I was praying that we were going to have a body.
There were overall between 2 and 3 full dive missions that were performed there without being able to locate any evidence that we could connect
Wow.
definitively to the Parker Ray investigation.
David had the perfect job if he wants to hide bodies or whatever. He had access to every nook and cranny of Elephant Butte State Park. He had access to areas that are kept under lock and key, that keep the public away from, but to which he had access.
We searched caves, holes in the ground, wells, mines, lakes. We searched everywhere we could possibly think. It was endlessly frustrating.
The case against Parker Ray was weak. The best witness had a patchy memory, and unless bodies could be found, there was a chance that a murderer would walk free.
He was an intelligent man and capable of going the extra mile and making an extra effort, especially when it came to this kind of behavior, to do what he needed to do to avoid detection, and I believe that's what he did.
But Parker Ray hadn't thought of everything. An extraordinary confession from one of his acquaintances was about to blow the investigation wide open. Police believed that victims of David Parker Ray's campaign of sexual torture were buried in the New Mexico desert.
Desert buried?
But no bodies had been discovered, and the case against him was on rocky ground. The only known surviving victims were a heroin-addicted prostitute and a woman whose memory of her captivity had been scrambled by Parker Ray's cocktail of drugs. But Kelly Van Cleve clearly remembered what happened before she was drugged. In July 1996, she was abducted from this once bustling bar on the outskirts of Truth or Consequences.
We rounded up a bunch of friends and went bar hopping. And this is where we ended up.
Bar hopping.
We always ended up here.
Free drinks, free drinks.
No matter
Bar
where we
hopping.
started, this is where we quit. There used to be a little mini bar sitting here. Pool tables right there. And we were playing pool, and I had ordered a beer. And I left to take one of my drunk friends home. and came back, and some of my other friends left. And at the
Go home. She literally took her friend home, went back. Her friends left. She's still there.
end of the evening, it was just me and Jesse. Jessie Ray, David's daughter.
Jessie agreed to give Kelly a lift home, but she drove straight to her father's house.
What?
The fact that it was his own daughter kidnapping just shows the depth of his resolve when it came to this behavior, and also showed his lack of emotional involvement with just about anybody or anything.
I just remember being on her couch,
You didn't.
her dad's couch.
You just sat on. You just went in.
That's when they held the knife to my throat, put the dog collar on, we duct taped, and handcuffs,
You just first day you met somebody, you just hop in their car and go to sit on their couch.
and I ended up tied to a table.
What?
Jesse, you have anything to say this morning?
Jessie Ray was arrested for her role in Kelly's abduction.
Are you optimistic that you'll be out soon?
Yeah.
It wasn't the only time she'd taken someone home to meet her father. In July 1997, 1 year after Kelly's abduction, a friend of hers had gone missing from the same bar. Marie Parker was a 21-year-old mother of two.
And it was almost midnight. She said she was going to go home and check on her kids. She'd be right back. By the time the bar closed at 2 o'clock, she still wasn't there and her car was still there, so. But somebody said Jessie followed Marie out.
No one has heard from Marie Parker since that night.
She had 2 little girls. There was no way she was going to leave her kids. So I knew something had happened.
The similarities between Kelly's abduction and Marie's disappearance seemed unlikely to be coincidence.
Ever heard of a woman named Marie Parker?
Not really, no.
She's a woman that disappeared about 2 years ago. And I just thought I'd ask, since I had the opportunity to ask if you had any information to provide me with that.
You know, with Marie Parker, we knew he was involved, but we didn't have enough information or evidence to pin anything on it.
She's the one that disappeared from one of the bars.
Yes, sir.
I know of the incident, that's all.
You were part of that by chance?
No, certainly not.
On the night Marie disappeared, Jessie Ray had been at the bar with a friend of her father's called
I thought
Roy
he wouldn't
Yancey.
lie, but he might lie.
The police suspected he was an accomplice and brought him in for questioning. His statement was astonishing.
From what I understand is that he's had many years of kidnapping, torturing, and killing women.
The story that Roy gave was that Marie Parker had in fact been a victim of David Parker Ray, that she had been abducted. While she was in the toy box, she was systematically tortured over a period of a couple of days. When she wasn't being tortured, she was placed on a cot and slid underneath a part of the wall in the toy box that they could shut and lock.
Fuck?
And at the end of all of this, the information that Roy Yancey gave us was that he was instructed to kill Marie Parker by strangulation.
How did you come up with the idea to kill Marie? That was David Ray Parker's idea.
It's pretty remarkable. It just seemed like it went up to a different level, and each level went up to it became more overwhelming. And then I began to wonder, where's it going to end?
I know they ended up giving me a rope and telling me to strangle her. And she wasn't dying fast enough.
Okay, but you said she wasn't dying fast enough. Was she struggling, or?
Yeah, she was struggling.
We have no doubt that his statement was accurate. His details were such that it's unquestionable that Roy Yancey killed Marie Parker.
I was told not to tell anybody anything, or I was going to be killed and thrown in the ditch.
And who told you that?
I did.
If Roy Yancey could take the police to Marie Parker's body, they'd finally have the evidence to link Parker Ray to murder.
David and Roy, according to Roy Yancey, took the body out to a remote location in the desert, rolled it down a ravine, covered it up with a little bit of dirt, and then drove back. And Roy was very specific and detailed about the location where this happened. He remembered, he said pretty well where this was. We felt that if we were able to locate this body, it was going to be a domino effect, and soon this was going to lead to more and more and more. We spent the better part of a week with Roy Yancey going to several different locations. We had 40 people out looking in these areas. We had helicopters out looking in these areas, and still we weren't able to recover a body.
Oh,
and
wow.
Roy's, I guess, hypothesis, which seems to be credible and makes sense, is that David returned to that location after the body had been disposed of and relocated it.
Yet again, David Parker Ray had been meticulous in avoiding detection.
He
We
had
spent
to,
a
no
great
cap.
deal of time chasing an intelligent man who was well versed in what he was doing and certainly able to cover his tracks very effectively. We were always one step behind him.
There's thousands upon thousands of deep, narrow ravines, nooks and crannies, and where do you look? We could be standing above her right now and never know it. And I often wonder how close did we actually come to her or some of the victims during the course of this.
Roy Yancey pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 20 years. But David Parker Ray maintained his innocence, and without Marie Parker's body, murder charges could not be brought against him.
It's extremely frustrating.
He probably
to know
got
that
less
he's
years for telling.
committed murders and yet not have sufficient evidence to bring this matter to a resolution in a court of law. But the fact that we couldn't prosecute him for murder made it all the more important that we successfully prosecuted him for the rape, tortures, and kidnappings that we could prove in court that he did.
The trial of David Parker Ray began on the 29th of June 2000. His fate now lay entirely in the hands of Kelly Van Cleve. Despite her patchy memory, she would have to convince a jury that he had kidnapped and sexually tortured her.
I didn't want to go to court. I didn't want to have to go face him. But I did it. He couldn't be out on the streets any longer. I had to do it. Because I had to do what I could to save other women.
Respect that. Oh.
As Kelly took the stand, Parker Ray was just
Everybody
feet away. It was the first time she'd seen him since her captivity.
He was just sitting there with a smug look on his face. And it pissed me off. He acted like he was totally innocent and he had done nothing wrong.
It's on video.
I didn't want to cry and let him know how much he hurt me. I didn't want to be his victim. That was difficult.
Kelly explained what she could of her ordeal in the toy box, but under cross-examination, she was attacked rigorously.
The defense point of view has to be in this case that she's not a credible witness and therefore should not be believed because she couldn't remember what happened.
You sit up there on the stand and wonder, are these guys going to believe me?
David's story was that she came over quite willingly, that they had some beers, and that she had consensual sex, that the sex became kinkier as she stayed longer, and that he cleaned her up and sent her home at the end of it.
Just lies. I think that was the most difficult part.
The fuck? This nigga
Was
is
all the
sick.
lies that they said. I could have faced David without the lies.
People often do things that they can't live with. And so they have to change the way they feel about what happened, or the way they report what happened, or the way they feel about themselves to account for that behavior.
The defence's claims that Kelly had consented to be in the toy box were contradicted by Parker Ray himself on the initiation tape that he played his victims.
You are obviously here against your will. You'll be raped thoroughly and repeatedly in every hole you've got.
But there was a problem. Kelly could not remember if Parker Ray had played the tape to her, so the judge ruled it was not relevant. The jury was not allowed to hear it.
The suppression of the audio tape weakened our case because they were not able to hear David's actual planning, preparation, and his own voice.
You're going to be kept like an animal. As far as I'm concerned, you're a pretty piece of meat. Your pussy and asshole is going to get a real workout.
This was essentially a confession.
The prosecution did have one more weapon to draw on: the video footage of Parker Ray torturing Kelly in the toy box.
Fuck.
When you look at the tape, you see that there's no evidence of injury because he's not beating her. He's touching her gently. He caresses her breasts. He lightly rubs her stomach.
Okay, and?
He lightly rubs her arms. She was able to sit there and loosen up her joints, and the way you would if you'd done something strenuous. And that was our interpretation of the tape.
I knew the defense was going to try to turn everything around on me. But I didn't think that with the tape, I figured everybody would know. Everybody could see.
Exactly.
I wasn't there willingly.
After a 2-week trial, the jury retired to consider whether Kelly's testimony was enough to lock up Parker Ray for life.
Kelly's the one who the jury has to believe in order for them to return a guilty verdict. I didn't think there was going to be any way that the jury would come back with a not guilty verdict in this.
When they finally made a decision and everybody got back to the courtroom, I knew it was going to be a guilty verdict. It had to have been a guilty verdict. They fooled me.
What do you mean?
The judge required a unanimous decision,
What do you mean?
and on July the 13th, 2000, the jury announced their verdict. Some jurors did not believe Kelly's testimony, so Parker Ray could not be convicted. It was a hung jury.
When they came back with a hung jury verdict, I about fainted. Literally. I didn't understand it.
What does that mean?
The decision was made to retry the case, this time with a different jury and a different judge.
I didn't want to go through court again. But I had to. He was not going to hurt anybody else.
9 months after the first trial ended, the retrial got underway. In a boost to the prosecution, the new judge decided that Parker Ray's initiation tape was relevant to the case and allowed it to be heard. Parker Ray's voice filled the courtroom.
Hello there, bitch. You probably think you're going to be raped, and you're fucking sure right about that.
I remember hearing his voice,
This
and
nigga is
it
stupid.
sent shivers
This nigga
down
is
my
weird,
spine.
bro. The fuck?
You're not going to remember a fucking thing about this little adventure.
It was like you could cut through the air with a knife.
As far as I'm concerned, you're a pretty piece of meat. Be smart and be a survivor. Have a nice day.
The audio tape was a crucial piece of evidence, but everything rested on Kelly's testimony. For Parker Ray to be found guilty, Kelly would have to take the stand once again and convince the entire jury that she had been kidnapped and tortured.
I was vulnerable. I was scared. But I was angry that he got away with the first one. Was he going to get away with the second one?
The police believed that David Parker Ray was a serial killer, but as no bodies had been found, he couldn't be charged with murder. Instead, he had been tried for the kidnap, rape and torture of Kelly Van Cleve. But at the first trial, the jury had been unable to agree unanimously that he was guilty. At the retrial, once again, everything rested on Kelly. Unless her testimony was believed by the entire jury, the charges against Parker Ray could be dropped.
No way.
It's very difficult to tell people you don't know
How can it be dropped? Like,
intimate things, sexual things about your life.
We tested her credibility in the fire of cross-examination and trial twice. Her life must have been hell.
I think it was harder the second time than it was the first time. Because I had already been there. I already had to tell my story to thousands of people I didn't know. And that first jury didn't believe me.
On April the 16th, 2001, after a week-long trial, the jury retired to consider what they'd heard. It took them just 5 hours to reach a unanimous verdict.
I was sweating. I didn't know what they were going to say. I had no idea. We got guilty. And he got 224 years in prison.
Damn.
Then we partied.
Do you believe Kelly's version of events is true?
Oh, so the question is whether I believe that she was abducted by the Ray family and held captive and raped and tortured. Yeah, I believe it.
But you're his defense attorney. You seem to be saying that your client is guilty.
I do seem to be saying that, don't I?
Oh, that's his lawyer?
In a deal with the prosecution, David Parker Ray gave up his right to appeal. In return, his daughter Jessie was released without trial for her role in Kelly's abduction.
I knew that not everybody I would ever defend would be innocent. I knew that some of the people that I represented would be truly bad people. And I believe that on the spectrum of people who do not belong in society, David Parker Ray is right in there.
Yeah, that's his lawyer. That's crazy. That's crazy. What? This nigga died after the trial? He served 8 months? That's why you gotta add the torture thing to the list of shit they do to people, bro.
Was justice done? I don't think justice can ever be done in these types of cases. What David did to these women, no amount of punishment to him can take away what those women have to live with.
David took too much of me away. I feel like I'm a totally different person. I don't go anywhere. I don't trust anybody. I miss the old me. The one that used to be wild and crazy and sassy and
Have to save your
wasn't
life, though.
scared.
Have you being out the street saved your life?
I would do just about anything to get the old me back. I wish he wouldn't have died. I want him alive. I would ask him why.
What
Why
the
me?
fuck?
Why did he take me home? Why didn't he kill me?
What the fuck?
I wish he was still alive so he could tell us what happened to all those other girls. Where he buried them, how he killed them, so those other families could have some closure.
Them people don't believe what happened, bro. What? That's crazy. That is crazy. Let me know what y'all think about that below, bro. That nigga's a sick bitch. If you like the video, man, like the video. Follow me on Instagram, see Daddy YT, man. I might do this